Hey guys, tonight we dive into understanding food labels and nutrition guidelines that are causing issues around the world with how we show up, how we feel on the foods we eat, because we don't know what's in them. So I'm going to walk you through some adjustments you need to make, understanding a concept called Post Ingestive Feedback, and how a lot of nutrition companies, or let's say food companies, because they're really not nutrition companies, are actually enriching foods to meet certain guidelines when the foods are really, really subpar. So hope this is valuable for you. Hopefully this allows you to look at the supermarket a bit differently. And if there's anything I can help with, please reach out. Our kickoff call with 16 of our new clients that have joined over the last 2 weeks has been fantastic. Just to get an idea of people in different parts of New Zealand, Australia, different backgrounds, getting an idea of what things that they're in the program to help with. So it's been really fantastic. 16 people in 2 weeks, and that wasn't even everyone that signed up. So it had some fantastic momentum with that, and I think always getting that insight into the expanse of how much we're helping people, or how many different types of people we're helping, has been fantastic. But anyway, what I want to dive into tonight is just getting an awareness of understanding labels, nutrition guidelines, really, really interesting topic. And we had a fantastic coaching call last night with our Meta Project guys, looking into what should we focus on? Where is that intention maybe spent? Because I think it can be really overwhelming when we know what food is really healthy. And sometimes if we've been going through diets before, or just the natural progression of foods becoming more processed, it can be very, very hard to know what healthy food is anymore. So if you're worried about, what should I eat? How much should I eat? Is this healthy? It's got this health tick. Is that a thing? And should I eat this? Is it something that actually comes through as being a healthy product, or is it detrimental to my health? And I think that's a really, really good question, that if you're already asking that, you're already one step ahead of the rest, because I think a lot of people are still looking at their up and goes and their cereals and whatever else coming through as being healthy foods. In reality, they're some of the worst things for us. They've just been spiked. And I'm going to walk in through what I mean by spiked, because it's I would say, nearly criminal aspect to the nutrition industry that is actually being approved by government regulations like the FDA to make foods hit a certain quota. And I think that's what's really getting in the way of people's digestive health, their energy, their cognitive function, and just knowing that what they're eating, what they're spending their money on for food, is it helpful or is it hindering? And I think majority of the time it's actually hindering. So I want to walk you through a couple of things around nutrition labels and understanding maybe comparison between some brands, comparison between what should I be really focusing on. So an awareness of where that comes through is looking at first, I think that's something that can come through is a banana doesn't have a barcode, right? And there's a reason for that. And this is something that Jamie, I won't take credit for that, said inside of our coaching community that I thought was really good. Because if food is truly natural, it's truly something that's come out of the ground, or it walked on the earth, or something that's just naturally eaten, it doesn't have a barcode, right? A banana doesn't have a barcode. A steak doesn't have a barcode. A kumara doesn't have a barcode. It's there because we know that there's a good nutrient quality coming through. So as soon as we start adding all this extra stuff in, it starts to become more and more complex. It starts to become more and more foreign to the body. And that's where those issues really come through, because it's foreign to our body, it's foreign to break down, and it just becomes harder and harder to digest. And that's not so great, right? So one of the common things that keeps coming through is the health ticks, the low cholesterol, the low fat, natural sugars. It's all bollocks, right? It's all ways of trying to make something look healthy that really isn't. We know, or we should know, that low fat basically means they fill everything with sugar, or they find some other way to bring it through. Look at yogurt, for example, right? It's low fat, but it's certainly not. A lot of them are certainly not healthy because they're really, really laden with sugar. Health ticks, I'm going to dive into why that's really not helpful. As long as they hit certain requirements of nutrients or zinc or folate or something that comes through, it's really not helpful to actually be a healthy food. They've just spiked it with extra stuff to get to that rating, which is not great. By no means is a Milo or an Up and Go actually a healthy drink, but they've found ways around it because they've added extra stuff in. Okay, low cholesterol, I'm not going to dive into that today, but really is completely marketing gimmick. It's having low cholesterol in food means nothing. Your cholesterol really doesn't change much by the cholesterol you eat. It's more about all sorts of toxicity and high sugar or poor sugar control, let's say, that is a much bigger problem. And sometimes the medical industry is far too narrow-minded on cholesterol. So getting an idea of low cholesterol is just a massive marketing gimmick that a lot of people are leaning too much into. All right. So I want to give you a couple of examples of what I mean by this, just to get an idea of maybe some of the the things to look out for, some examples that we went through with our private clients literally last night that I think might be helpful for you. So the first one we looked at was nuts, right? These two nuts look healthy, right? You're already supposedly taking the healthier alternative, but there's a big difference between natural nuts that haven't been added all this extra stuff and these nut and seed mix that are lightly roasted, right? And they're adding all these canola oils in, they're adding all this extra stuff on top. Yes, it makes it tastier, but it's adding all this extra toxicity to the body, and it's really, really not helpful at all. The second one here is looking at certain almond milks, or if we're getting away from dairy, for example, there's a massive difference in a low, an unsweetened versus some of the ones that are just there to taste good, or barista made almond milks. They start to add all this other stuff in there because almond milk or oat milk doesn't froth up the same way, right? So to make it a barista made oat milk, for example, they add all this extra stuff in there to bulk it up to make sure that it can froth up. So it's really, really not great for the body, and you might as well just have the dairy. There's a massive difference between the range of sauces that come through, and looking at the difference from, say, this Dalmane or the Tuimato to a Barker's tomato sauce, or even just the light, the low sugar Watties one. There can be a difference of 30, 40 grams of sugar per serve, right? It's massive. Some of these sauces, they have such a small, and this is the trick, guys, they start to add in such small serving sizes, right? Like 10 grams. Most people have 30, 40 grams on a meal. So they make the serving sizes smaller and smaller because they don't want the sugar to look so big. But the trick is, if you look at the per 100 grams, you look at how much sugar is actually there, it's like 40% sugar. The sauce is over 40% sugar. We're now getting in the territory of Cokes and all this stuff, right? So getting an awareness of these little tricks of the trade that come through when people are looking at sauces, when people are looking at foods they're adding in, they're really finding ways around it. Hummus, this is one I've posted up in this group a couple of times before, right? Just hummus. You'd assume that, it's got a big red tick on there that looks like it's nice and healthy, right? Well, wrong. It's hiding everything. We've got Lisa's over here that, just a standard old hummus that we've added in. It's got all the ingredients on the front. It's actually got chickpeas and not a huge amount else in there. It's definitely a better option. And then the just hummus, I actually took a photo of this in the supermarket the other week. They've added all this extra stuff, and straight away they've made it harder for us to look, right? Now, Lisa's have got it on the front. This is what's in it. Just Hummus are trying to market as a nice, simple brand, but it's because they chuck everything underneath and they try to hide the stabilizers and the canola oil and all of this extra stuff that comes into their foods, right? If they're making it that hard to find, there's a reason for it. So taking that time to get an awareness of some of those coming through can be really helpful. All right, I talked about the Milo, getting an idea of these health stars is a complete fad because they're looking at how they can spike those foods with certain nutrients to bring it up to rating. So that's something that's really, really an issue that is massive in the US, and it is only getting bigger around the world. Where they're actually chemically enhancing foods to make it seem more healthy. And it's actually, the FDA even requires it now with US manufacturers to enrich foods to meet certain standards. So if they're a poor quality food, or if they're not up to standard, they don't say you can't be on our shelves. You say, well, put a little bit of zinc, put a little bit of folate in there, and you'll be good, right? And it's absolutely bizarre that they're letting that come through. Now, this is becoming a huge problem in pregnancy and defects after birth, where in that space, people were told to take folic acid, right? This is huge problem in the medical industry where we're being told to take a folic acid, right? And that's really, really bad because folic acid is allowed to block the receptors, right? But it's not actually allowing more folate in the body. It has to be methylated. It has to be converted to be able to use that folate properly. And because we're blocking all the receptors with all this extra gunk and all this extra folate added into our foods, our folic acid, that can be a really, really big problem for a lot of these birth defects coming through. Okay, so getting an idea of how detrimental some of these little boosts or enriching that seems harmless, right? But is actually causing really, really big problems in today's society because they're just trying to hit regulations without fixing the problem. Okay, so this is something we look into a lot with just why a big part of this whole foods base and awareness of what foods you feel best on. This is quite an important conversation. Okay. The last thing I wanted to touch on, guys, hopefully this is making sense. I really hope this is a little bit of value or shines light on maybe where we start. The one thing I want to touch on here was an awareness of what we call post ingestive feedback. Now, this is a natural mechanism that we all have in our brain, which is our body seeks certain flavors if we're low on certain nutrients. You may have also heard of this called cravings, right? When we're craving a certain food, it might actually be because we're nutrient deficient in certain things. The trouble is manufacturers and food science has got to the point where they can actually adjust those flavors and heighten those senses towards certain foods. So rather than going towards berries because we're a little bit low in copper, we start going towards something sweet, they're like lollies or whatever coming through, right? Rather than going towards something high in sodium and adding in good quality foods, we're back to the bottom of the Pringles jar, right? These have been so manufactured in a way to really make sure that we have the Pringles effect, right? The reason that's there is because they're able to really leverage something called that post-ingestive feedback. So taking that time to simply, what we've gone through today, look at the labels, look at all the extra stuff that's coming through, or simply look at the per 100 grams to get a better idea of how much sugar is being involved, can be one of the key aspects in you bringing awareness to how you feel in your own skin and having much more control of knowing what you're eating through an understanding of these simple traits. So I hope you get a bit of value from that. I didn't want to make tonight's one a long one. We've been on an absolute blast with understanding where certain foods come from, understanding what that progression of foods over time that's really causing havoc in today's society. And I think even the understanding of a lot of these low-fat foods still being around, causing a lot of issues, right? People adding probiotics into yogurt and calling it healthy. It's complete bollocks, and the probiotics aren't even helpful, right? Taking that time to look at food in a different way and bringing it back to simple is always the best way. Certainly not bland, right? We want to make food taste healthy. I'm a massive advocate making sure that everything you eat should be healthy. If you don't like it, don't eat it. But taking that time to understand what's in your food goes a really, really long way. So hopefully that's helpful, guys. Hopefully that shines light on a couple of things that might allow you to make a couple of adjustments as you go around the supermarket shops over the next couple of weeks. And if there's anything I can help with, anything that you're struggling with personally, just reach out to me and I'm more than happy to answer a couple of questions for you. So have a lovely rest of your Thursday, and I'm more than happy to dive into this at a later date, but hopefully you got some value out of tonight. It'd be great to hear from you soon. All right, have a lovely one. See ya. Bye.